I like to think of the energy types in human design as different roles on a team, right? Like not everyone can be the goalie, not everyone can be the forward in soccer, but together those different positions make up a really well-functioning team.
Before we dive into today's episode, I want to introduce you to our sponsor for today, Jane, a clinic management software and EMR that helps you handle your clinic's daily admin tasks so you can free up your evenings and weekends. The Jane team understands how precious your time is and recognizes that charting can often be the most time-consuming task for practitioners. That's why they're here to help. To save you from having to start your chart notes from scratch, you can check out Jane's template library, which gives you access to templates that have been generously created and shared by health and wellness practitioners in the community. Once you have a template you like, you can choose to customize it further with charting tools such as range scales, text fields, checkboxes, and more. To see how Jane can help you spend more time doing what you love, head to the link in the show notes to book a personalized demo. Or if you're ready to get started, you can use the code JOHN at the time of sign up for a 1-month grace period applied to your new account. Let's dive in. Caitlan Siegenthaler is a human design strategist, IFS therapist, podcaster, and your go-to for ditching the shoulds so you can actually enjoy the business you're building. With her no BS human design insights and a knack for getting to the heart of what makes you tick, she's here to help you align your life, your biz, and your weird, wonderful self without losing the magic along the way. I almost made it through that without stumbling, but
well, I think close. It's good. I think it's good that we emphasize weird though, because that is the most important part of that intro is like,
that's
yes,
all
going. Parts are welcome, even the weird ones.
I was trying to stick that landing on weird. So in that regard, I did it.
You did.
Kaitlyn, thanks for being here. And what else should people know about who you are and how you got here?
Yeah, thank you so much, John, for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation. And I think it's important for people to know that I am a licensed IFS therapist first and foremost. And right now I'm also a new mom. I have a 10-month-old little guy. And I realized that in developing like new parts, parenting parts, having all of that going on, I'm pivoting my business. And so I think people should just know that I'm like very honest and a human, and I'm kind of sharing that and taking people along the journey with me. But for anyone out there who isn't IFS, I've been doing it for a while now, and I'm IFS level 2 trained. So probably will do level 3 at some point and might go for a certification. But I'm a huge fan of the model in general, just the change I've seen in my own inner world, the change I've seen in my clients, and the richness in my relationships makes me, just really grateful to have come across IFS. And now blending it with human design, I feel like gives all the parts of me, the weird ones, the more spiritual ones, the inner child, the more exiled ones, a little bit more, space and breathing room. And I guess for anyone listening, to just kind of ground them location wise, I've lived abroad. So I lived and did my human design training actually in the IFS UK with them over there. And I lived in Switzerland for a few years, in Spain for like 4 months, and now I'm back in the US. So,
yeah, what a journey. What part of the US are you in now?
I'm originally from Denver, Colorado, but right now I'm in Virginia Beach, Virginia. So,
oh, okay. Yeah, I'm from Roanoke, Virginia, which is a little mid-sized city that most people don't know about. But yeah, I grew up going to Virginia Beach every summer, and I've now lived abroad a few times too, so I can appreciate that perspective and just the formative experiences that can bring about, and the perspective of leaving the U.S., coming back to the U.S., leaving the U.S., and everything it kind of illuminates. So, yeah.
Yeah. Where did you live abroad, if you don't mind me asking?
We were in Paris,
Cool.
and my daughter was going to be born there, and then COVID happened and changed our plans kind of overnight. And otherwise, we would probably still be there. We had a really amazing life in Paris and friends and community. And for me, it was
Yeah.
just what I needed coming off the tail of, working a lot and getting burned out and just being kind of like a victim to a lot of U.S. Values or toxic U.S. values like capitalism and
100%.
overworking and
Yeah.
perfectionism, a lot of things actually that would infuse themselves into my business, right? Of like scarcity mindset and not enough.
100%.
And I'm like not grinding enough, whatever it is. A lot of that, I kind of picked it up through, through it being in the water. And not to say I'm fully healed in those regards, but living in Paris certainly helped me slow down and, shift my priorities a bit. So anyway, we could talk more about that, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a similar experience in terms of COVID impacting plans. I was living in Switzerland at the time of COVID, but I agree. I think it was really helpful in term from an IFS lens for me to get to know parts of myself that were more culturally developed, or legacy burdens, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, starting out with this human design piece, what is human design?
Yeah. I'm curious for you. Have you ever heard of it, or do you know your energy type or anything?
No, the short
Okay.
answer is no. I know about things like lifestyle design, and I'm really interested in things like that because of being an entrepreneur for my whole career as a therapist and also a podcaster, a content creator, someone who is interested in how we got to things like the 40-hour work week and why it should
Totally.
be so. So, but that might not have anything to do with human design.
Well, I like where your head's at, because I think that we can take that idea and sort of hold that here and then also bring in human design. So, human design is a little bit more like spiritual in terms of its origination and how it's used. So, it was downloaded, and I say this in air quotes, by this guy who gave himself the name Rahuru in 1987. So, there's a bit of a culturally appropriated tone to it. And however, despite its kind of questionable slash problematic start, I think human design is essentially the blueprint or information that we all have that is about how we are designed to show up in the world and how we should best use our energy. So, like you were saying, what you've learned about other design strategies or other things that can be helpful as entrepreneurs, human design is the same. So it basically combines astrology, the I Ching, Kabbalah, Vedic philosophy, and the chakra system. And if you look at the chart, it's this blank human head and like a floating body with no arms, and then there's different centers and different pieces to all of that. So it looks like the chakra system imprinted on there. But I think what's most helpful about human design is really the energy piece. And I'll get into in a little bit more about like weaving human design with IFS and how that can be super helpful for folks. But I'll just pause there since you're new to human design and just see, yeah, what's going
Well,
on
I'm
for
I'm
you.
really interested. It's not what I thought it might be, but I'm very interested. And you're certainly in the right place in terms of being on this podcast because the more I do this, the more I end up interviewing guests like you that have kind of like an IFS and something that is
Yeah.
auxiliary to IFS. And I find a lot of IFS folks naturally have their hand in energetic work, spirituality, astrology, genogram, like all sorts of things. And so, I've had Bob Falconer on here multiple times. Like we
Oh,
have this
amazing.
type
I'm a
of
fan of his work. Yeah.
this type of conversation. So yeah, I'm just curious for you to say more.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so now that we've like landed the initial plane, human design is really an experiment as well. So we're meant to take the information that we're given about our energy type, which is sort of just like the big header. There's lots of other details, but I think today we'll just go into energy types because that's
Great.
the most like out there and the most information folks can find. But I always like to tell people it is an experiment, and my playful parts sort of love that, right? Like that's already giving a little bit of self energy because we can be curious, we can play around, we can see like, oh, okay, so I'm this energy type in human design. So maybe I should try approaching XYZ thing in this way. The like fundamental piece. So as listeners are listening to this is like the key header about human design is it helps you understand how you are uniquely designed to operate in the world rather than how you are conditioned to show up. And now we can start to see where IFS is coming in as well of like, ooh, what did our parts learn versus what's like that core self. And that's why I love it. And I get really excited about combining the two. So
Amazing. Yeah. So how do you go about finding your energy type or helping your
yes.
clients find
Yeah,
theirs?
great question. So everyone has a chart similar to like astrology, right? You could go on the internet and put in your like birth date, time, location, and boom, an astrology chart is going to pop out. It's the same thing for human design. So we could even live look up your chart based on your birth date, time, and information. And it's going to give you this like, it's called a body graph, but like I said, it's just a picture of a human head with no face and a bunch of lines and charts and numbers. And it's kind of like astrology in that way, and that it's really overwhelming. But people can just Google, and I can even share a link with you if we want to put it in the description. A link to getting their human design. Jovian Archive is a great resource. So is myhumandesign.com. But once you pull your chart, then you can see there are different components to it. And so for listeners listening who want to follow along and do this with us, they can go to myhumandesign.com, put in their birth date, time, location, and then they will get at the top, it's going to say energy type. And I'll talk about the 5 different ones.
Wow. Very interesting. Well, I'm happy to be your guinea pig if that's on the
Yay!
table.
Let's do it. Yeah, of course. I think this will be
Yeah,
fun and like helpful for people who have different learning styles
sure.
too.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it, John. All right, so you're going to go to myhumandesign.com.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to do it or are you going to
Oh,
do
I
the
can do
research?
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
that's fine. Sure. Happy to do that. All right. Are you okay with telling people your date of birth and
That's a good
location? And
question. Maybe I should double think that. I don't
that's why I was
uh
like, I don't know. I can give you the link if you want.
okay, so myhumandesign.com. So I'm there.
Yeah,
I'll just put it in really quickly and then we can
sounds good.
talk through it. You know what? Even easier. I'll just put it in the chat for you because
Perfect.
I'd love for you to be able to see the results and kind of like walk me
Yeah.
through. I don't know the precise time I was born. No, pretty
If you have
close.
like a 4-ish hour window,
Okay.
that would be good. Okay, cool. I'll
Okay.
use the like middle of those two things.
Perfect. Okay. Could text my mom right now, but
Right, Mom? All right. So, in about 30 seconds, we should have your chart, which is so exciting. Oh, there it is. There are many towns with the same name of the
Yeah.
place you were born. There we
Yes,
go.
there are.
All right. Ooh, so fun. Okay. So, wait, how can let me download the chart so I can send it back to you so you
Mm-hmm.
like can know what I'm looking at.
Sure.
And for listeners that are listening, once you do this with us, you're going to get this thing. It's really overwhelming at first. Like everyone has this experience
Yeah.
of it being like, wait, there's all these numbers and
Yeah.
da 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 da. So I'm going to keep us focused on the high level and
Okay.
then help people have resources if they want to know more. Is
Mm-hmm.
there a way I can upload it?
Maybe not here, but I know you can
Oh,
share
I'll
the
just,
screen. I don't know if that would show my birthday and all that, but
I don't know. I'll just email it over just so you have it.
okay, cool.
Sending it now. just so you can see it, because there's a big visual component to this. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you are listening, you can take the information if you're like driving or something, but I would recommend coming back to it when you can sit down and visually see your chart so that it's
Okay.
just really clear what's going on and how you can
Okay.
get there. All right. Oh, where is it now?
So I'm assuming this is something you actually do with clients, or you have them do it and then bring it in.
So this is something that I do with clients. So if
Mm-hmm.
clients are working with me, they would give me permission to pull their chart, and I would do
Mm-hmm.
this ahead of time. So I would already know their chart. And then the first step in my process is always getting a chart reading, right? So
Okay.
that they understand what's going on in their chart, that they have all of the information, and that shapes our work together in that way. So I always have their chart on hand and reference it and
Mm-hmm.
give them information so that they can feel the most empowered that they can.
Okay.
Sorry, I
Interesting.
don't. Why?
It's okay. You can send it to me later. We can
Okay,
just talk through the results.
sounds good. So the results are. I get really excited about everyone's chart in human design. I feel like, um, but your results. So you're a generator, and for anyone listening, this is going to be. It's going to say type when you pull your chart and you look. And I'm going to talk now about the main types because that's what you're going to find the most information about on the
Mm-hmm.
internet about what's happening. And with human design, I like to think of it. I played sports growing up. So I played soccer and basketball. So I like to think of the energy types in human design as different roles on a team, right? Like, not everyone can be the goalie, not everyone can be the forward in soccer, but together, those different positions make up a really well functioning team.
Mm-hmm.
So, your energy type is actually the most common, which is great because that's where we're going to start, anyways. And you're a generator in human design. So, I like to think about the generator as the person who is like joyful and has consistent ongoing energy on the team. So your energy is best used when you are doing things that like really light you up and make you feel excited and make you feel just happy to be doing them. You are the energy type on this like collective team, if we think about it as a collective, that's going to get us moving forward because you have so much energy to use. But it's only when you're doing things that light you up or make you happy that your energy is like clean energy, if that makes sense. What's going on for you as I
Hmm.
say this?
Wow. Um, the first thing I thought of is really just a parallel to like doing this show. Because when I'm aligning what I'm doing with my passion and something now like IFS and trauma work and just my identity as a therapist, I have like limitless energy, which can
Yes,
also be a risk too. When I mentioned before, like the burnout of
totally.
putting so much into it. I also, um, interestingly, I'm Reiki level 2 trained, and my Reiki
Oh, cool.
instructor, like that first time I got trained, was like, you have a tremendous amount of energy,
Yep.
from a Reiki perspective. Even though I'm not like bouncing off the walls, and that type of frenetic energy, but I had a lot of energy that was palpable in that Reiki context. And so that kind of aligns with me too. And then on the other hand, yeah, like I said, if I'm doing things that are draining or have to do things that are draining, it's like the opposite, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, really, any generators listening, if they want to best use their energy type, they should do as much as much of the
Mm-hmm.
things that bring them joy as possible. And what's cool or what I like about human design is there's a information, it's called your how to know you're off track, right? So for you, that is it's called not self theme, but I've renamed them because I think they're kind of like not that does not really helpful, right? So you're off track when you feel really frustrated as a
Mm.
generator. And you're I see you nodding. I'll give
Yeah.
you a second.
No, that's great. Yeah, if I feel like things aren't moving forward, I have very low tolerance for it. I
Yeah.
have low tolerance for like bureaucracy and
Yeah.
things that have a lot of steps or unnecessary steps. And also, it's probably why I'm pretty well suited for entrepreneurship, because I like things that are fast and loose and don't have a lot of rules, for being able to like make content and do it my way or have these conversations. So that appeals to me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for all generators listening, their like sign that they're aligned is just when you feel like really that energy where you could it's like limitless, but it feels like when you eat good food and not junk food, like junk food, it
Mm.
tastes good, but it's going to give you that like high and then you're going to crash. It's the same for generators. Like you probably have a lot of energy to do this show because
Yeah.
I imagine you enjoy it. I mean, if you've done
Yeah.
as many I'm a podcaster too, so I know the effort it takes to put this out. So you have
Yeah.
to like it to be able to do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I have an analogy that I came up with just when working with a client a long time ago, which was clean fuel versus dirty fuel, right? Or having
Yeah.
motivation of like, again, maybe like a scarcity mindset, or just wanting to like crush the competition or to see other people lose. And these fuel sources that might be really potent are giving you like spurts of energy, but are ultimately pretty dirty and unclean and not great for you. And so a lot of what I think about is connecting people to a clean energy source, whatever that might be for them. So that could be like connecting them to their purpose, switching into a
Totally.
career that's aligned with their values and who they are. A lot of people, like from a cognitive dissonance perspective, live in a lot of dissonance and wonder why I have this anxiety in my belly all the time, right? They're just totally out of alignment or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's nice to give it a name. Like as a generator, your sign that you're out of alignment is frustration. I think naming that,
Yeah.
and when we bring human design in, like, oh, so what parts of you feel frustrated when, and kind of pulling that into the context. So, the last piece I want to say before we kind of pause, and this is what's hard, is we're trying to distill down like a pretty complex thing
Yeah.
in a short amount of time. But if we keep it high level, as a generator, you also have a strategy. And this is where I really like to use it with entrepreneurs so that they can use more of that strategy in their businesses. And I love helping service providers like therapists. And so, your strategy, and anyone else who's a generator, is to respond to things. So, you should really never like start anything from a blank screen. You should or a blank slate. You should really be responding to the world. I think there's a quote by Dolly Parton where she's a generator in human design. And it makes me, I'm trying to remember the quote, but it was something like everything was inspiration to her for her
Mm.
work. And she's like, I just go out into the world and get inspired. And that's a very generator thing to say.
Fascinating. Yeah. I could align that really easily with my life as a musician. I've been a drummer since I was 10, and
Oh, awesome.
notoriously, I have a really hard time generating anything without being with other musicians. It's almost like I don't know what to do or play, but then if I'm in a room with even one musician, things come alive like really quickly. And then I have like friends on the other hand who in a room alone can create amazing things out of nothing. And I've always been interested in that too. But same thing for these podcasts, right? Having people like you come on and generating ideas is way more natural for me than sitting down and going, okay, I'm going to share 10 ideas right now,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like you get to respond to your guests and what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Yeah.
makes your show so appealing. So,
Mm-hmm.
that's the generator type. And for any people who have statistician parts or logical parts and want to know the breakdown, generators make up about 37% of the population. So they are the most common energy type. And if we go back to the team analogy, right? Like on a soccer team, we need people who have that level of energy to be in the majority so that we are not all just like, okay, we need to take a nap all day, every day, right? And when the idea or like the thing in human design that I think weaves so well into IFS is, in human design, it's about alignment. In IFS, it's about self and self energy and supporting those parts and helping them return to self and be known by self. And it's kind of the same thing, because the more we have people doing what lights them up or being in their like generator energy, that to me is exactly the same as self energy. And we can
Mm-hmm.
get into the overlap with IFS and the exciting bits once we ground people in like all of the different energy types, just so they can learn a little bit more. But I hope that's resonating. I really wish you
Mm-hmm.
could see your chart, because you're going to be like,
It's
but we
okay. It's definitely, has my interest. I'm of course curious to hear how this has played out in your life. I'm also yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think before going into the other energy types, I'll just
Mm-hmm.
talk about my experience and use it as an example. So I'm a projector in human design, which is about 20% of the population. So if you pulled up your chart and it says projector at the top, you are the same energy type as I am. And I first heard about human design probably in like 2017 on a podcast. And I was like, huh, that's weird. Some guy like went into the woods and downloaded this thing, and it seemed really complicated at the time and it didn't really resonate. And so I just was like, huh, that's interesting, but I'm going to leave it alone. And then it kept appearing over and over again. Then I heard it on another podcast, and I heard it on another podcast. And finally, I was curious enough to be like, what is this thing? And by 2018, I'd started ordering books and reading stuff and getting really into looking at my own chart. And when I learned I was a projector in human design, something in me just clicked. You know, when you have those moments where your parts feel deeply seen, it was
Mm-hmm.
one of those moments for me. And I think that's why I love combining IFS with it, because there are parts of us that our protectors are protecting and we can't quite get to, that all of a sudden our protectors have a different perspective. So what happened for me was I realized that I had parts of me that were shaming me for the way I was interacting with the world. And one of the important things to know about projectors is projectors don't have the same energy as you. So you have, as a generator, a consistent energy source. Like, you generate your own energy every single day. As a projector, I don't have that. So my energy is inconsistent. It means I am not here to do all of the doing, but I have other gifts that I need to use them for. And when I found that out, my inner critic was able to stop shaming me and stop the story of being quote unquote lazy, because that's what I had been conditioned to believe
Mm-hmm.
about myself. And, we started this episode with talking about living abroad and realizing like cultural and legacy burdens that we might
Yeah.
have picked up growing up in the US. It was just this moment of like a reframe almost of, wow, maybe I'm just designed differently. And that my gift isn't that I need to do all of the things, but as a projector, my gift is having like a bird's eye view
Yeah.
on people and how I can make things more efficient, both for people and in their life. So that's
Wow.
my, yeah, story about coming into human design and feeling just really seen and really moved. And then that's when self comes in, right? Then I was able to have so much compassion for all of the parts involved in that, not only the parts that were trying to help me fit in a generator world, but also the parts that were, you know, saying like, hey, we're tired, we need a break, we need some rest. So that just opened up a pathway to self energy that I hadn't experienced.
Hmm. Yeah, some other words that help me make sense of this, and especially coming from, the world of psychology, are uh, like strengths based, approach to
Yeah.
kind of seeing a person. I also think about uh, human development a lot. I have a 4-year-old daughter, my first child, and she seeing her grow into like her gifts and strengths, or even seeing at school where some of her gifts are really well utilized and some of them are really not, they're like not
Yeah,
valued. And I have parts that are really activated by that, because that was
of course.
in my story. I wasn't a kid who could sit still or remember things or memorize things. And so I was stereotyped around that, and really suffered because of it. And so I've had to then create a life as an adult that's really centered around my strengths or my innate gifts. And to your
Yeah.
point, like we have parts that can do it. Like when I have a
Yeah.
friend who has like this kind of intellectualizer part that likes to like know the hard facts about everything, but it just kind of feels like a part. It does, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like that's a way of kind of like staying safe, but it's also a distancing thing. And it's like that's a strong part that's valued in society, of like being a hard scientist, being a critical thinker, like show me the numbers kind of perspective. Um,
Yep.
and if that's truly who you are, then that's beautiful. But sometimes it doesn't feel like that's quite who you are, right? Or even if we ask clients to connect, like, does that feel like who you are? There's like, well, no, but it's like, but it pays off, right? Or it pays well, you know?
Yes. Yeah. I'm so appreciating what you're saying because I feel like untangling that is always at the core of my work, right?
Mm.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you truly are a logical person, that's great.
Yeah.
And if you have a part that is protecting you by using logic, that's a different story.
That's right.
And
That's right.
that's what I love human design for because it's like, yeah, strengths based, right? It's like all of a sudden you can see this part in a different light that the external world maybe wouldn't value as much or wouldn't give as much credit to in like a capitalistic society, right? Because I have
Yeah.
parts that are like, and I don't know, I feel emotional even thinking about them, but they're the young parts that are like, I just want to play. I just want to run around and play outside. Like, why are you forcing me to do these things? And I know human design is a gateway to like unlocking that world a little bit more with more permission and more more self energy that protectors have previously kind of derailed us into one track of thinking.
That's right. Yeah. Uh, I'd love to hear more about the other energy types. I'm sure people listening who are not a generator are dying to hear.
They're like, okay, next, come on. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So the next most common energy type is something called a manifesting generator. And it's taking the manifestor energy type, which we'll get to in a little bit, and the generator and like smashing them together. So this is about probably like 33-ish% of the population. And so generators and manifesting generators make up 70%, which is why if you're a non energy type like me, I think we're even more like, oh my goodness, human design. That's right. I don't have all of this energy, but manifesting generators are these amazing, multi passionate, and we can all have different like I would consider
Mm-hmm.
myself a multi passionate person, but manifesting generators are like, what's going like they are meant to kind of bop from thing to thing to thing. If we think about the energy on the team, they get the team excited. Like they are the people that bring that level of excitement and they're coming with new ideas. And if we go back to the soccer team, maybe they're going to the coach and they're like, maybe we should do a different, you know, we should have a different number of people as forwards and then we should do a different kind of layout and move around the defense. That's a manifesting generator energy. Like they are really lit up by doing a bunch of stuff and using their energy to do it. And so they're here to respond to things like your strategy, but then to initiate things. And that's the manifestor strategy. And they can also feel that frustration when things are off track, when things are not going well. And I think manifesting generators get a little bit misunderstood sometimes because, especially in the business world, as entrepreneurs, we're told like pick a niche, write a niche statement, da, 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 da. And that's helpful. Like you need to know who you're talking to with your ideal client. However, manifesting generators are so multi-passionate. Like I have an incredible friend and colleague who's a manifesting generator, and she has a true crime podcast, but she also is a professor and teaches about decolonization of therapy and all of that stuff. And then she also does Reiki, and then she does, and you can kind of start to see how all of this stuff
Yeah.
is not connected, but that's okay. And so I think I'm passionate too about helping service providers do this, because let's build a business that is centered on how you're designed and help your parts, and how your parts show up. So that's manifesting generator. They of course have consistent energy as well, just like a generator does. And yeah, I'm sure we all know a manifesting generator in our lives. And it starts to get really cool when you have the charts of people around you, like your partner and your kiddo and all of that stuff. Um, the next energy type after manifesting generator in terms of commonality is projector, which I shared. That's what I am. I talked a little bit about a projector, but it's 20% of the population. And projector energy is really like deep. If you think about an aura, they can like penetrate into the other person in a really deep way. And so projector strategy is actually to wait for the invitation. So you and I did human design perfectly because you invited me to be on this podcast. Instead of me reaching out and being like, "Hey, John, have you ever heard of this? Do you think you should do that?" I was just sharing and talking about human design and IFS, and that resonated. So then now I'm here. That's me living out in my strategy, because we need people to be ready for what we have to say as projectors. And as a projector, whenever I tell projectors this, they're like, "Oh my gosh." They can think about so many times when they had a part that wanted to force someone to do something. Like they could just see it happening, and like, "Oh, I really want my mom to go to therapy because da 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 da." And I can just tell that this and that. And when we're not invited to share that wisdom, we can kind of get cut off from connection.
Mm.
And that's something else I love about human design, is it helps bring us into connection, not only with ourselves, but with other people, which is, one of the 8 C's in IFS. So projectors also know that they're off track when they start to feel resentful. And I could feel this so much in my previous even work. I didn't go to grad school right away to become a therapist. I worked in the corporate world and then I left, but I was feeling so resentful there. And I didn't know about human design at that time, but that would have been really good information for me to
Mm-hmm.
have. Projectors also don't have consistent energy. And that guy that started all of this, he said projectors are meant to only work 4 hours a day, which I was like, "Okay, that sounds great." And I
Yeah.
think all of us, would appreciate that and resonate with that. But yeah, projectors, the wisdom for projectors, or the gift, is not in the doing, but in their ability to kind of see how things could be more efficient. And we need that on the team, because if we go back to the soccer team, the projectors are going to the coach and they're like, "You know what? This is really inefficient." And I can tell that our goalie, Kaitlyn, I didn't play goalie because I was like, "This is too much pressure." But our goalie, Kaitlyn, she's really good at penalty kick saves, but I think her punting needs some work, or whatever it is. Projectors can kind of see that in other people. We have 2 more types and they're not
Go
very
for it.
common.
Okay.
So the last type, or the second to last type, is a manifester. And it's about 7% of the population. And they are initiators. So they have this very intense energy. They're here to like initiate things and kind of kick us forward. Like we might be kicking and screaming, but they're like, "Hey, this is where we're going. I know that we need to go there. So come on." I think manifestors are probably the coach of the soccer team, and they're like making us do all of this conditioning and running. And we're like, "Ugh, stop. I don't want to do it." And they're like, "Nope, too bad. You're going to do it." they can be repelling though. They can have an intense aura, and they're really misunderstood. I'll just tell a quick story about my dad.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad is 65, definitely of the baby boomer generation, probably couldn't tell you what astrology is. And when I was talking about human design, he was starting to like listen. And my joke is, if we're seated together at a dinner party, I likely will have your chart pulled up by the end of the night, and we'll be chatting about it. So eventually my dad was like, "What is this?" He wanted to know. He was curious. There's my invitation, and my projector parts are like, "Yes, grab the microphone, let's tell him." So I wasn't doing chart readings at the time, but I got him like a printout and gave him more information and got him more information about his chart. And that was 3 or 4 years ago, and he still talks about it because his parts had felt so seen in that
Mm-hmm.
experience, had felt so understood. Those parts that had been told, you're too much, you got to do things this way, all of the things, they felt like, wow, they had permission. And what I would describe from an IFS lens is my dad now has so much more self energy without even going to therapy
Yeah.
to those parts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last type is reflectors, and they're only 1% of the population, and they are here to really reflect back how we're doing. So if we think about the team thing, they're like telling us, yep, you guys are doing great as a society, or no, you're not. And their strategy is to take some time and really reflect. They know they're on track if they're feeling surprised. And yeah, there's so much more to say, but I really want to be mindful of
Mm.
time.
Well, I do want to talk more about the types, but I also want to hear about the other components of human design. You mentioned the chakra system, something I've been more and more interested in over the past few years, especially as I have gotten deeper into my own spirituality and energetic work,
Yeah.
Reiki. So, how is the chakra system relevant to human design?
Yeah, beautiful question. So, if you could see your chart, there is a body graph, and it is like there's triangles,
Mm-hmm. I pulled mine
and
up,
then
by the way.
there's
Yeah.
oh, you have it?
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, great. So everyone following along, pull up your chart. This is the time, or come back to the section, bookmark it. So, do you see, John, like your chart, for instance, at the very top, there's that top triangle and it's not colored in, and then
Uh
there's a
huh.
bottom triangle flipped down. Do you see all of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all of that aligns with the chakra, right? The
Mm-hmm.
crown chakra. Then we have the ajna center. Then that square, right, going down that column, that's your throat chakra. Then we have the G center, like the heart chakra. And so that's how human design overlaps with the chakra system. Is if it's colored in, that means you have consistent energy available in that chakra. If it's not colored in, that means that you are open to and taking on the energy of other people. So you had said something about your experience in school, around like ideas or something about that made me think about your openness at the top of your chart, particularly in your crown chakra and your ajna. So I don't know if that resonates. I can't even remember what exactly was said, but there was a part of me that was like, oh, he has all of those open. And I just like made a little mental note. So
It's fascinating. This piece around, so it says on the right, authority, meaning the way you make decisions, would
yeah.
be my sacral chakra, aka listening to your gut. It's actually something that I've been really focused on this idea lately of in the case of trauma, we often bypass our intuition. We bypass our gut. I've had
Yes.
so many clients who say, I knew not to do X, Y, and Z, or I knew this was a bad person or there's something off, but I did it anyway. Right. And I'm so interested in how we get there to bypassing intuition. And then what happens is this major disconnection from it and from the gut, right? From your intuition.
Yeah.
Because you know, because I got traumatized, I got abused, I got misled, whatever. And so I've been making more decisions from my like sacral chakra, like literally from my
Great.
gut and letting my body tell me yes or no. That's a
Yes.
way better way of making decisions for me than being heady. And why don't you make a pros and cons list? Like that just doesn't work for me. And so with some clients, I'll do something as simple as like in working to reestablish this connection is like looking at a piece of food on your table and wait until you get an answer from your body of like, do I want to eat this or not? Like kind of like intuitive eating or whatever. But it's just a different way of getting information, right? And could we be open to getting that way of information and see what clarity feels like? Or even starting with like, is your name John? And
Yeah.
seeing how that resonates in your body. Like basic building blocks of strengthening that connection again is super interesting to me.
I love what you're saying because you've intuitively tapped into alignment in your design. And a lot of times when I read, I do audio reading. So I send it to people. I'll
Mm-hmm.
do the whole audio thing so they can listen to it over and over again.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, I find that's better because, some parts like
Yeah.
need time to digest. Anyways,
Yeah. It's a
so
lot. Mm-hmm.
so the feedback I always get is like, "Oh, wow, I was already like feeling like this or doing that just in what you described. Like you've
Yeah.
intuitively arrived at that place." And so sometimes I think human design is just the permission slip to like keep going and let your
Yeah.
logical parts know, like, hey, it's okay. I've got this. But
Yeah.
what's so interesting about the authority is like we all have different authorities. So yours is sacral, but mine is not. So I'm actually not meant to listen to my gut at all. And I think this is one of the most underestimated things and so helpful in trauma work in using IFS parts work because it's like, did that decision come from a part of you
Right.
or did it
Right.
come from self?
Right.
And knowing the way you're meant to make decisions in human design
Yeah.
can
Or what
help
self feels like to
reaffirm
you.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, even these markers of how do you know when you're in self or more in self than in a part, when you have a sufficient degree of self energy or making a self led decision, or if you're going into a really hard conversation with like your partner or someone at work or whomever or a friend, you had some conflict. How do you know when you're in self, right? Or bringing more self into the situation? That's a question I ask clients a lot because their experience of it is very different.
Yeah,
Sometimes we just have to we get there by unblending from parts, right? Or coming in and going, oh my gosh, I have this conversation coming up with my boss and I'm just freaking out and going toward that and using it as a trailhead and slowly unblending from parts and then going, notice how this feels different than when you came in, right? Open, expansive, curious. I'm actually
totally.
feeling hopeful about the conversation now. It actually could be a good thing. Just like, what are the markers that, that you have for how you know you're more in self?
Yeah, I would say definitely coming back to my body. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, self feels so calm and feels so, um, I experience it in my body as just like almost a knowing, like
Yeah.
a kind of like this knowing place. And I can connect that to my human design and my decision making strategy because my decision making strategy is actually like a whisper comes in and then I'm meant to follow that. But I think exploring that question and holding that is so helpful for people as they work with IFS and work with their parts. And even if they want to use human design as like a tool, as more information, as a guide
Yeah.
to doing that, because my podcast is called Return and it's all about helping people return to themselves. And I think human design is one of those ways. IFS is one of those ways, but they all are information, like
Yeah.
guiding us back to our truest desires.
Similar to the experience of your dad, um, it parallels the paradigm shift of IFS or the stance of IFS of what if there was nothing wrong with you,
Yeah.
right? Or in my case, having done pretty poorly in school and concluding there must be something wrong with me or a lot of things wrong with me. In fact, teachers and school psychologists and
Ugh,
physicians were telling me there was a lot wrong with me. But this possibility of what if there was something wrong with you can be uh, such an inspiring sentiment. And then getting to know your parts, your types. I mean, again, people love anything in the realm of, personality test, just anything that goes, oh yeah, that is how I am. And I have this feeling that I can't really change it, even though it causes friction sometimes in my life, or I resist this part of me that is analytical or quote too sensitive or whatever it is, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of our suffering comes from that hesitance or that friction inside of, I wish I wasn't this way, right? And we're exiling our own exiles, you know? So
Yeah, exactly. Especially the exiles that aren't externally celebrated
yeah,
or externally
yeah,
seen. Like, there's
right,
a lot of very hardworking protective parts that get a lot of external validation, but
yeah,
they can really, they need extra support in the system. They can cause a lot of polarization and
yeah.
things in the system.
Burnout.
Burnout, yeah. Oh my gosh, I could could be a different podcast, but that's where I find human design is like turns a light on, you know, for those parts and for those protectors to see things differently or to even see the exiles that
Yeah,
yeah. So,
beautiful. Somehow we're out of time, which I need to just start doing 3 hour podcasts apparently, because anytime I reach 50 minutes and I'm like, now I have 100 more questions and curiosities about my guests and what they're bringing. So, yeah, that's for another day, or I'll just have to have you back another day to talk more about this. Hopefully this has given people an idea of what this is about, what it can offer them. You mentioned some great resources like myhumandesign.com for folks to start digging into their own types here. That being said, I also know you help people with stuff like this. You mentioned the audio readings you do. I'd love for you to plug some of that and let people know, how they can reach out and learn more about working with you.
oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me, John. And I know we talked a lot about human design today. And I understand, everyone, we all want to have more compassion for ourselves, which is super top of mind for all of us. So I'm going to give your listeners 20% off of my human design audio reading so they can get way more information about how they're uniquely designed. And I do all of these custom. So I tell you exactly like everything in your chart. There are different options and so that they can start there and really see that there are no bad parts. And I will give you the link where folks can purchase that, but they should use the code inside that I created for you at checkout. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
We'll put a link to that in the description. That's a great way to get started with this stuff. I might even take you up on it, just to get deeper into my reading here. That being said, also, are you doing therapy nowadays, or how else do you like work with clients?
Yeah, great question. So, as I mentioned, I'm in the middle of a pivot. I do have a small practice,
Uh huh.
therapy practice where I do IFS therapy. I still go to IFS weekly supervision. I love my supervisor. She's amazing. Um, However, I'm not taking any new therapy clients, but I am taking folks for a container of one-on-one work using human design and whether you're an entrepreneur or a service provider, um, getting into more of the strategy. So aligning
Uh
your
huh.
business to how you're designed. But I can never get away from IFS. I still do parts work. So
Okay.
it's this combination of human design, business strategy, and parts work. And people can find more information about that. I'll send you over the link. I have one more spot for November, and then I'll run another grouping of that in January. So, yeah.
So cool. Yeah, I love how people integrate IFS with so many different things like this. It's
Right?
incredible. And like, there's not many other models within psychology, psychotherapy, whatever IFS is, I don't really know, that can be integrated into things like this and all the other different fun things that people are presenting at conferences. So it's really neat how you're integrating both, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
Cool. I'm glad I landed that plane because it
Yeah.
would be really bad if at the end of this you're like, I'm still very confused. I don't know what you do, Caitlin, and
Yeah.
how did you come to this? So I'm glad
Yeah.
it makes sense and I hope it makes some sense for listeners. But I love questions. I love
Uh
talking
huh.
about this stuff. And also I have my own podcast where people can find
Mm-hmm.
more information. Like I have a episode about relationships and human design that might be
Cool.
interesting for folks
It's
too. So
perfect.
yeah. Yeah.
I think what's good is that it's not, yeah, human design is not overly simplistic. And so, um, I can tell there's a lot more depth and richness to it than just like, I'm an INFP and that's what I know, and it kind of stops there. So I can tell there's a lot more depth to this. And if nothing else, it's certainly piqued a lot of people's interest today. So great
Cool.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much
you
again for
again,
having
Kaitlyn.
me.
Yeah, I'll have you back sometime. Links will be in the description for everything. And thanks again.
Sounds great.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Going Inside. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching, and share your favorite episode with a friend. You can follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at John Clark Therapy, and apply to work with me one-on-one at johnclarktherapy.com. See you next time.